1974, climate scientists figured out that chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, were destroying the ozone layer. Americans and Scandinavian countries voluntarily banned CFC use in spray cans within 5 years. A few years after that, President Ronald Reagan, Vice President George H.W. Bush, and British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher played an instrumental role in bringing about an international treaty banning CFCs. Decades later, the ozone layer has still been preserved, and you do not need to think about it at all. However, climate change action has not followed that rational trajectory. Scientists have known for over a century that human-caused greenhouse gases would warm the planet. 4 decades ago, climate scientists began seriously sounding the alarm about the dangers posed by unrestricted emissions of greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, from the burning of fossil fuels. In 1977, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences warned that unrestricted greenhouse gas emissions might raise global temperatures as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit, 5.5 degrees Celsius, and raise sea level 20 feet. The Academy, the nation's most prestigious scientific body, was chartered by Abraham Lincoln to give advice to the nation on scientific matters. In 1988, the nations of the world came together to task the top scientists of the world with regularly summarizing and reporting on the latest research and observations. The central purpose of the resulting United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, was to provide the best science to policymakers. In the ensuing years, the science has gotten stronger, in large part because observations around the world confirmed the vast majority of the early predictions made by climate scientists. At the same time, many cornerstone elements of our climate began changing far faster than most scientists had projected. The Arctic began losing sea ice several decades ahead of every single climate model used by the IPCC, which, in turn, means the Arctic region warmed up even faster than scientists expected. At the same time, the great ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica, which contain enough water to raise sea levels ultimately 25 to 80 meters, 80 to 260 feet, have begun disintegrating a century ahead of schedule, as Richard Alley, a leading climatologist, put it in 2005. In 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017, we learned that both ice sheets are far less stable than we realized, and they are dangerously close to tipping points that would lead to irreversible collapse and dramatic rates of sea level rise. In the last several years, we have experienced a spate of off-the-charts extreme weather events that scientists had predicted decades ago. Heat waves, droughts, wildfires, superstorms, and superstorm surges. Meteorologist and former hurricane hunter Dr. Jeff Masters said in 2012, "This is not the atmosphere I grew up with." There is an ever-expanding body of scientific literature that clearly shows that greenhouse gases are fundamentally altering the climate and sharply boosting the chances for many types of extreme weather events. For these reasons, the IPCC, the U.S. National Academy, and the United Kingdom's Royal Society, as well as many other scientific and international organizations, have released increasingly urgent warnings of the dangers of inaction, as well as stronger and stronger calls to action. Although this has all helped restart a global conversation on climate change, human-caused emissions of greenhouse gases have continued their rise almost unabated. In fact, growth in emissions began accelerating after the year 2000. Because global temperature rise and other impacts are driven by cumulative emissions of greenhouse gases, those soaring emissions have kept the world on track for the worst-case scenarios of climate change. The slow pace of national and global action in response to the scientific reports written for policymakers has led to more scientists communicating directly to the public. In 2010, Ohio State scientist Lonnie Thompson explained why climatologists had begun speaking out.